Welcome to the first meeting of the Council in 2023. I'd like to take the opportunity to wish you all a Happy New Year. To start the meeting, I'll deal with some procedural matters before moving on to my announcements. Are there any apologies, please? Councillor Hassel.
Yes, Mr Mayor, Councillor Jed Potter and Councillor Tracy Pearce will be late.
Thank you.
Shiraz Khan.
Khan.
Councillor Lonsdale.
Councillor Lonsdale. Any others? No? Thank you. Any declarations of interest? Take it that's a no. Item 3, we'll now approve the minutes of the November meeting of the Council. Will somebody please move these? Councillor Smale, they seconded. Councillor Eyre. Everybody in agreement? Anybody against? Thank you, that's passed. Item 4. I'd like to begin my announcements by sharing a message with the people of Derby from His Majesty the King. Members will recall that at an extraordinary meeting on the 21st of September last, you unanimously agreed that I should send your condolences to His Majesty on the death of his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. I've now received a response from Buckingham Palace addressed to the residents of Derby and members of Derby City Council. It reads, "It was so very kind of you to send me such a wonderful, generous message following the death of my beloved mother. Your most thoughtful words are enormously comforting, and I cannot tell you how deeply they are appreciated at this time of immense sorrow." And it is signed Charles R. I believe that's the first letter Derby has received, signed Charles R. And it includes a colorised picture of him as a young boy with his mother. I've made arrangements for both the letter we sent and the King's response to be retained as part of the Council's collection of heritage assets for the benefit of future generations. Moving to a procedural matter, Council Cabinet have referred a decision relating to the setting of the council tax base to Council for approval in anticipation of budget setting next month. The minute extract was not published with the agenda owing to the meeting not having taken place at the time. The item was circulated on Friday and has been available to view on the Democracy Portal since then. Secondly, I have agreed to reorder this evening's agenda to accommodate 2 members of the public who are in attendance this evening for the item relating to the baby and infant CPR. I propose that we take that notice of motion immediately following the public questions and before member questions. For those who are not already aware, since our last meeting of Council, we've received a second councillor resignation. I understand that Alan Jack Graves stood down as councillor for Bolton Ward with effect from the 23rd of December 2022. As the date of the resignation falls within 6 months of the local elections in May 2023, the seat will remain vacant until then. I've been asked by Councillor Webb to promote an important piece of archival work led by Derby Community Action. The Derby Wall is currently on display at the Cathedral, I saw it last night, and documents the city's response to COVID-19 pandemic. Councillor Webb, would you like to say a few words about this important project to help councillors promote it to their residents?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I'd be more than delighted to promote the Derby Wall. As you say, it is a commemoration of experiences through the COVID pandemic. We are one of only a handful of local authorities who decided within the pandemic itself to ensure we captured the experiences of our communities during this unprecedented national event, and to make sure these would be kept within the archives of the city for future generations to see. to help them understand the enormous sacrifices and impacts on our residents. Working with Community Action Derby, an archivist was commissioned to record the many stories from across the city of how COVID-19 affected people's lives. These memories demonstrate the kindness and support given by so many, as well as the difficulties and challenges faced. Part of the project included the creation of painted tiles to express individual experiences at this time. A local artist, Maggie Roper Attenborough, worked with hundreds of people and community organisations across the city to paint the tiles, resulting in 1,000 individual paintings, which she then put together to make a wall to commemorate and record the way COVID-19 impacted on the city. The wall is now available to view in the cathedral in Derby, but plans are to separate it into pieces to be kept permanently in different locations throughout the city, so as many people as possible can see it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Webb, and I would certainly endorse that. It's really well worth looking at. I hope we'll be able to accommodate it here in the Council House. 1,000 paintings, all saying something quite emotional, is really worth looking at. And I think, like the Knife Angel and the Museum of the Moon, it will attract the public, and it'd be nice to have a few people back in this building, wouldn't it? Finally, I am saddened to report the passing of two notable individuals. Donald Armstrong, who died in November, aged 89, my friend and former colleague Martin Bertelen, who died on Saturday. Don Armstrong was the original chairman of the Conservation Area Advisory Committee, and it was largely due to his campaigning that that committee was first established in the 1960s. He remained in the chair until the 1980s, when the Constitution changed. For decades, he gave unpaid service to the council and campaigned tirelessly for the highest standards of conservation of Derby's heritage. He was also a founding member of Derby Civic Society and remained a life member. He was the author of a publication titled Town Trail, later revised as City Trail, that was sold to promote tourism in Derby when such ideas were rare. He'll be sadly missed by all who knew him, and I attended his funeral last week, where I was able to pass on the council's condolences and thanks to his family. Martin Bertelen was a Conservative councillor for Kingsway Ward from 1987 to 1995. He served on the Housing, Leisure and Planning Committees, and when the Conservatives won a majority in 1988, last time they did, he became chairman of Equal Opportunities, Personnel and Performance Review Committee. It was as chairman of Equal Ops that he made his greatest mark by declaring 1994 Derby's Year of Disabled People and inviting Simon Weston to open integrated play facilities in Markeaton Park. 33 years ago, he gave Anne Webster the courage to apply for employment with the City Council, a post she still holds to this day. Before we pause for a minute's silence, does anybody else wish to speak on either of those? Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I've known Martin Bertelen a long time, about 25 years, and it is very sad, and it was sudden. And my and our parties, all of us no doubt, condolences go out to his wife Louise and extended family. It is a very sad loss. That's all I've got to say, really. Thank you.
If anybody likes or dislikes the council logo, referred to very often as the snail, you can blame Martin Bertelen for that. but he was the person who actually brought that in, and we still have it today. So we'll rise for a minute's silence. Item 5 is statements by members of the Council Cabinet. No statements have been received. Item 6, questions from members of the public. We'll now hear questions from members of the public to Cabinet members. We've received 11 in total. Where a written response has already been provided in the booklet, we will hear a summary of the question from an officer before inviting each member of the public to ask their supplementary question. I'd like to ask public and member questioners this evening to remain concise when asking their supplementary questions to allow us to proceed with the business of the meeting. The first question is from Nick Northover, and it's question A. Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Northover's question is to Councillor Barker, and it is, why has Mr. Northover been directed to the Freedom of Information process to access public information in relation to the Micklova Ward Committee?
Thank you. Mr. Northover, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The answer I've received indicates that there is clearly an awful lot of work to be done by the Council to ensure scrutiny and transparency, and I welcome progress on that matter. With regards to the issue in question, in Micklova, I've had a very brief look at the freedom of information that only received this afternoon at the 11th hour. In Micklova, we have, for example, notice boards that can't be opened or used by the public. We've got planting bins that are being bought, used by the community money and branded by the local community group. What I would like to know is what measures the council are going to take to ensure that local area funding is used by the areas and not used for political gain. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Barker. Question B, Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question B is from Amanda Goy-de-Monk to Councillor Webb. Will the council reinstate care workers who were dismissed for not being vaccinated against COVID-19?
Do you have a supplementary, Amanda? Is she here? Okay, we move on then. Question C, Alex.
Question C is from Claire Woods to Councillor Hassel. It is, will the council consider introducing car-free Sundays as recommended by the International Energy Association?
Do you have a supplementary, Ms Wood?
Yes, I do. Thank you. The IEA recommend car-free Sundays as they say they would reduce carbon emissions, air pollution and noise and increase active travel and therefore public health. When is the council going to do the right thing, as other cities are doing, and stop prioritising the choice of motorists all the time, instead of prioritising tackling climate change, pollution, public health, and the choice of people who don't want to have to breathe in toxic fumes every single day and who want to cycle or walk but don't feel the roads are safe?
Councillor Hassel.
Yeah, evening, Claire. The public have a legal right to use the highway in a legitimate way. And as such, we do not have the legislation in place to do anything to the contrary. Thank you.
Question D.
Question D is from Ruth Coates to Councillor Hassel again. It is, has the Cabinet member listened to the BBC Radio 4 series Rethink on tackling climate change? I understand that verbal response is to be provided to this one, so Councillor Hassel.
Councillor Hassel.
Evening, Ruth. Yes. Yeah, I will take some time to listen to it on the sound app. Thank you.
Do you have a supplementary, Ms Coates?
Oh, yes. Okay, well, shame you haven't listened to it yet, because it is very good. My question is, given that many of the solutions to tackling climate change are both simple and economical, I'm baffled as to why we're not already implementing these measures. Even if the impending climate crisis is not motivation enough, there is also the cost of living crisis affecting many Derby residents, which would be greatly eased by a more sustainable way of life. Many of the experts on the programme were of the view that the main obstacle is not financial constraints, which is the excuse usually trotted out, but government opposition to taking action. Why are both national and local government so resistant to making the necessary shift in thinking and policy?
Councillor Hassel.
Is that a question or a statement?
Well, I suppose, yeah.
Noted. Thank you.
Question E, Alex.
Question E is from Pauline Inwood to Councillor Hassel. It is, what support will the council provide to environmental activists and groups in Derby who are seeking to change the course of climate change and ecological collapse?
Do you have a supplementary, Ms Inwood?
Yes, I do. Thank you for that, the response. It's short, but it is a good response. Thank you. So I can follow on by asking whether you can help on something, because that's what you're offering. A big campaign and project this year, with many individuals and organisations in Derby actively involved, is to encourage as many people as possible to meet in London in April to persuade the government and all MPs that no new licences to extract fossil fuels should happen. Could council resources, not necessarily financial, because I know that there are financial constraints that are great, be called upon to aid publicity, for example, for this, and maybe provide accommodation for public meetings for this? Who could we liaise with to this end?
Councillor Hassel.
Evening, Pauline. Yeah, we have several climate champions within our numbers, as well as myself. Please feel free to send us all the details and we'll see what we can do.
Okay. Question F, Alex.
Question F is from Kevin Scott Savage to Councillor Hassel. Will the Cabinet member confirm that a report on the future of the Guildhall Theatre will be considered before March of this year? I don't believe Mr Scott Savage is here. So question G is from Lucy Giuliano to Councillor Barker. It is, why are public questioners required to submit their questions a week in advance of council meetings, and why are the responses only circulated an hour beforehand?
Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you. So thank you for explaining the statutory requirement, and I appreciate that you do receive a lot of questions that require time to respond. My question is particularly pertinent today, as due to a technical issue, the responses were only made available at 5:20, which gave us just over half an hour to prepare our supplementary questions. In the spirit of the balance you referred to in your answer around openness, transparency and accountability, could you please explain how the Council's resources would be affected if the publication time was moved from 5 p.m. to 12 noon to allow us a reasonable and manageable amount of time to respond? And if the impact is not considerable, could the full Council please consider an amendment to the Constitution? Thank you.
Councillor Barker. Question H.
Question H is from Helen Hitchcock to Councillor Pearce. What is being done to ensure the physical safety and perception of security for users of parks and sports facilities? I don't believe Helen is here this evening. So I is from Ruth Coates to Councillor Hassel. Will the Council consider the banning the use of plastic bags and packaging in local businesses?
Do you have a supplementary? Ruth?
Yes, I do. Am I switched on? Right. It's good to hear that the issue of unnecessary plastic waste is being addressed. I do, however, still have concerns. Making it the producer's responsibility to pay for the disposal of plastic packaging still depends on householders making the effort to sort it and send it for recycling, which I know for a fact many don't. One particular problem is the soft plastic packaging, such as the bags that prepared fruit and veg and frozen foods come in. I suspect it's only nutters like me who save it all up and take it to specific collection points. Most of it still ends up in landfill. Would the Council consider introducing curbside collections for this waste?
Councillor Hassel.
That's really not my portfolio or position to add to that, but I think you should be heartened by the government's amendments to the Environment Act this week, which talks about this very subject. Thank you.
Thank you. Question J.
Question J is from Pauline Inwood to Councillor Hassel. Does the Cabinet Member agree that funding for councils to improve the design of active travel schemes will have little impact if nothing is done to tackle the speed and volume of traffic on Derby streets?
Do you have a supplementary, Pauline?
Yes, I do, unsurprisingly. Thank you for the answer. It does give several examples of attempts to improve road safety in Derby, which are great as attempts. Unfortunately, most of them don't seem to go far enough. I cannot agree that Derby roads, like the roads, I cannot agree with all of the answer, because Derby roads, like the roads in most cities, are definitely not safe or healthy, not for pedestrians, not for the disabled, not for cyclists, and not for children and adults on the school run. No amount of spending on active travel schemes will improve this without radical thinking to reduce speeds and to reduce the quantity of motorised traffic on our roads. Will the perceived wants of drivers always be prioritised over those of other groups?
Thank you. Councillor Hassel.
They will while we are in the position we're in. I will add to that is that road safety is in large part down to the user, not the road itself.
Thank you. Councillor Kay. Question K.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question K is from Lucy Giuliano to Councillor Hassel. How many cyclists have been killed or injured on Derby Road since January 2020?
Yes, I do. So Thank you for acknowledging the significance and impact of the tragedy that these statistics represent. I actually spoke extensively with Josephine's father last week, who I've stayed in touch with since her death. I've changed what I was going to say in light of Councillor Hassell's response to Pauline Inwood's question. I would just like to ask if we could please hold a minute's silence, because it's not up to us as vulnerable road users to be safe on the roads. Is that possible, to honour her memory and her death, please?
I'm going to put that to the council. Those in favour of holding another minute's silence, please show. Anybody against? In which case we will do just that. That concludes the questions from the public. Councillor Ingle, we were going to bring your motion now. Sorry?
Thank you, everybody. Sorry about this, Mr. Mayor. I had a message this morning. You've probably noticed during public questions that we're missing one regular presenter of questions. Simon Bacon is quite poorly in hospital at the moment, but I'm sure he'll be watching on YouTube. Hopefully he is. So can I just send my best wishes to Simon from the council? Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think our most dogged questioner deserves that much. Okay, thank you. Councillor Ingle, are the members of the public present? It has gone a bit quicker than we could have. I think that's probably a good way to deal with it. We'll come back to item 13 then in a moment. There are no questions received relating to the Derbyshire Fire Authority or Derby Homes. Questions from the non-council cabinet members. We now move to those. We have 22, although some have been grouped together. We may not take the entire 22 if that member of the public turns up, and I crave your indulgence on that. It is a particularly sensitive issue. The first question then is Councillor Graves, Councillor Pearce. Question L, Alex.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question L is to Councillor Pearce. Why has the council introduced a charge for residents to replace their bins?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Graves? Thank you. Question M is from both Councillor Martin and Councillor Lynn to Councillor Webb. M, Alex?
M is our questions in relation to the crisis in the NHS. Those questions are: what role has the council played in responding to the current crisis in the NHS and the critical incidents declared by the Royal Derby Hospital?
Councillor Martin, do you have a supplementary?
I do, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask Councillor Webb why the council is proposing to reduce the budget for the Critical Home First service, which provides social care for people coming out of hospitals in the current budget, but we did discuss that last night at the Scrutiny Board meeting. So my question to Councillor Webb this evening is the Conservative government doing enough to help the NHS? Thank you.
Councillor Webb, can you answer His Majesty's Government?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Martin. You'll see in the response that has been given to this that I've invited the Secretary of State and the Minister of Care to Derby to actually come and see what the current situation is within social care in this city. I do not like introducing budget cuts, and I will continue to lobby for funding for this council and for other councils across the country to see social care properly funded.
Councillor Lynn, do you have a sub?
I do. Thank you, Councillor Webb. It's good to hear that you've invited the current Minister for Care to come to Derby, no doubt to have lunch, which is lovely. But what I'd like to know is what the council is doing under your leadership to lobby government. I've seen nothing online, nothing in the media, and our group haven't been invited to any cross-party talks with government. So do you plan to do this? If so, when? Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
There is an open invitation for all parties to come and see any cabinet member if they wish to do so.
Thank you. Question N, Alex.
Question N is from Councillor Repton to Councillor Eyre. It is, can the cabinet member provide an update on the strategic review for libraries?
Supplementary, Councillor Repton.
Yes, Mr Mayor. Having asked for expressions of interest for community-managed libraries, when was the key decision constitutionally made? Has it been through Cabinet and executive scrutiny?
Councillor Eyre.
Councillor Repton, the expression of interest process is still open and available for people to express their interest, and I would encourage people who are interested to do so. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Question O, Alex.
Question O is from Councillor Whitby to Councillor Williams. It is, which aspect of Ashgate Nursery's business model does the council believe is responsible for its deficit?
Councillor Whitby, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr Mayor, yes. The school is very clear that the council have accepted that all areas of the school's business model are currently either breaking even or returning a small profit. So does the cabinet member agree that a reduction of around 65% of the SEND funding since 2020 is the more realistic reason for the budget deficit?
Councillor Williams.
No, I do not agree with that.
Thank you. Question P, Alex.
Question P is from Councillor Schenker to Councillor Poulter. What has the Leader of the Council done to ensure a decision is made by the Government on Derby's bid to be the headquarters of Great British Railways?
Councillor Schenker, do you have a supplementary?
I do, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Poulter, for confirming that. As you know, I've already also written to the Secretary of State, and unfortunately, the response, and I assume you've got a similar response, has been non-committal onto when a final decision will be made. What do you think, as civic leaders, we can all do to apply further pressure and influence to make sure a decision that was due in, I think, August, September last year is made as soon as possible, so Derby and other cities involved know where we stand on this important subject?
Councillor Poulter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. All I can suggest is that we continue on a cross-party basis to take every opportunity to lobby for exactly that. We're doing it on our local MPs are doing it on a cross-party basis. Margaret Beckett and the other two MPs in the city have been doing that on a consistent basis. I understand and I'm hopeful that there will be an early announcement in March, and the feedback we get from the transition team and everybody we contact is very, very positive, so I'm extremely hopeful. I have to say that my opinion, it might be that the cause of the delay is not hesitation over the proposal, but complications and not fitting well with the current industrial action that's taking place that requires a cooperation in reviewing operating systems on our railways, and that's what Great British Rail will encompass. So maybe when the industrial action's out of the way, the government would feel more comfortable in introducing this announcement, which we're extremely hopeful in the city. Thank you.
Question Q.
Question Q is from Councillor Peatfield to Councillor Hassel. What is the remaining balance of the £3 million climate pot, and what is the breakdown of the spending?
Have a supplementary?
I do, Mr Mayor, thank you. First of all, Councillor Hassel, you didn't answer the second part of my question, which was what is the spend breakdown? So obviously if there's 500,000 that's been spent, where has that gone? And also, obviously the Forest for the Future was funded by this climate pot. I'm aware that some of the trees were replanted in Alveston Park, which is wonderful. But how many trees from last summer's project died in storage?
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Councillor Peatfield. I don't have the detail on the tree situation. That's not my department. You'll have to ask Councillor Pearce. As for the breakdown of the funding pot, there was a Climate Champions meeting a couple of weeks ago, which unfortunately wasn't there, and a full breakdown was given there, but I can get that detail to you.
Thank you. Question R.
Question R is from Councillor Dinsey to Councillor Pearce. How will proposed budget cuts to Street Pride affect the service?
Supplementary, Councillor Dinsey.
Thank you for the response. Do you think that these cuts proposed by your administration will inevitably mean that the problems of fly tipping, environmental waste, public ground deterioration will increase? Do you think that this is what the people of Derby deserve?
Councillor Pearce.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Dinsey. You got the full answer on that on Monday at the Exec Scrutiny meeting. Thank you.
Question S, Alex.
Question S is from Councillor Heselgrave to Councillor Hassel. When will the council recommission and reprogram the traffic lights at the Kingsway roundabout?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Heselgrave?
I do indeed, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your characteristically laconic reply, apparently written to you or for you by an officer of the council.
You may want to withdraw that remark then, sir.
What, that it was laconic?
This is not open for debate. Please give your supplementary question, Councillor Heselgrave.
So from your answer then, Councillor Hassel, are you basically saying that after almost 5 years of dithering delay on this by your minority Conservative administration, ushered in by the Liberal Democrats, we're getting further dithering delay concerning Kingsway roundabout?
Councillor Hassel. Councillor Pearce.
Yeah, the answer is no, basically. It's going to take place between 23 and 24. We're now in 23.
It's not open for debate. Thank you. Question T, Alex.
Question T is from Councillor Carr to Councillor Pearce. What are the current proposals to reduce the use of glyphosate in streets and open spaces?
Councillor Carr, do you have a supplementary?
I don't, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Question U.
Question U is from Councillor Testro to Councillor Pearce. Are there any plans in the next 2 financial years to undertake highways improvements for St Andrews View? I understand that a written response hasn't been provided in the booklet, so Councillor Pearce, would you like to respond?
Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary? Beg your pardon. To answer. Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Testro. As you've already publicly stated when you attempted return to this group, Councillor Testro, that the Conservatives are the best placed to run this city, it will come as no surprise that St Andrews View is on the programme to be resurfaced within the time period you have asked for. We're due an annual engineered inspection in March, and if St Andrews View has deteriorated quicker than originally estimated in comparison to other similar roads, there is a chance that this can be moved up the programme. I'm pushing this at every opportunity. When we have exact dates for this, the ward councillors will be the first to know. Again, thank you for the endorsement, and please be sure to remind residents at election time.
Thank you. Councillor Testro, do you have a supplementary?
I do.
Can you switch your microphone on?
Is that better? Yeah. Has this decision been made since the question was submitted on Monday morning?
Councillor Pearce.
No.
Yep. Move back to the item 13, which is the debate to be, the motion to be moved by Councillor Phil Ingle and seconded by Councillor Celia Ingle. Councillor Ingle.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, for bumping this item up the agenda. I hope so Rowan's parents can witness this. Mr Mayor, Celia and I attended Rowan's funeral late last year. I can tell you now, looking at his little coffin is something I'll never forget or want to see again. When Rowe fell ill, his parents were frantically trying to find out how to perform CPR on him. Who knows if those lost vital few moments could have saved him? It's something we will never know. What we do know is that if they and other parents had been given just some basic training, CPR would have been performed immediately and Rowe may have been saved. Mr Mayor, there are approximately 200 SIDS or cot deaths each year in the United Kingdom. If this motion and subsequent changes save just one baby and saves parents going through a living hell for the rest of their days, it will be worth it, and it will be a fitting tribute to Rowe's life. I commend this motion to the House and that it is moved as printed. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. I understand, Councillor Celia Ingle, you're to second it. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I formally second this motion and reserve my right to speak. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much for bringing this motion. My group will be supporting this motion, but I wanted to give you and some of the families some assurances of what's already happening. So as you know, in the council, what we are developing is some family hubs across the city. It's a really good initiative, but what we've done in the family hubs in partnership is we are actually going to be running paediatric first aid courses, and hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, the first 10 to 20 courses should be run by the end of March, with 2 again in each children's centre or family hub, and then every month following that for the next 2 years. So I wanted to give you some assurances that we as a council are already looking at this, and of course we'll be working with our health colleagues to see if we can do everything possible that can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Kerr.
Chair, when we read this, my first thought was actually, what are the statistics about this? Obviously, it's something that you hear about, and your heart goes. Anybody who's been a parent, your heart goes out to the family who has lost a child so young, or a child at any age. So I looked at the ONS, and I just want to read out the headline for 2020, which is the latest figures. In 2020, 2,226 infant deaths aged under 1 year and 789 child deaths aged from 1 to 15 years occurred in England and Wales. It said to me those first 12 months are so critical, and we really do need to know how to react to a child, a very small child, and their death, and you know what Councillor Williams has just announced, and if we can have some impact on training through the NHS system, hopefully those numbers will change.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Celia.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
In which case, Councillor Philip Ingle, would you like to sum up?
I'm really heartened by the support from everybody, to be honest with you, and I can speak on behalf of Chris and Rach to say thank you all very much indeed, and I'll move this to the vote. Mr Mayor, thank you.
All those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous, I think. Anybody against? In which case, that is carried, and I'd like to speak on behalf of the full council to the lady and gentleman in the gallery and express our condolences, and I hope that what has just happened stops it happening for somebody else. Thank you for coming. Can we resume then the questions? I think we've got to V, Alex.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Question V is from Councillor Kerr to Councillor Pearce. It's how are regulations relating to persistent organic pollutants such as soft furnishings affecting the operation of the Rainsway Household Waste Recycling Centre?
Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary?
No, Chair, I just want to say thank you for checking and receiving this reassurance.
Thank you. Question W.
Question W is from Councillor Nater to Councillor Smale. What is the administration doing to support residents struggling to afford the costs of prepayment meters during the current energy crisis?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Nater?
Just a little addition, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to thank Councillor Smale for his response. In writing to government, can I request, in addition, that he certainly looks at social housing, it's high on the agenda as well as our own housing stock and those of social housing providers. The prepaid meters seem to be a bigger issue around those housing associations. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Question X, Alex.
Question X is from Councillor Graves to Councillor Webb. It is, will the Cabinet member respond to an article in a local blog in relation to the use of properties at 28 to 30 Varley Street that could be used to house Derby families?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Graves? No, thank you. Takes us to question Y.
Question Y is from Councillor Shanker to Councillor Smale. Will the Cabinet member provide an assurance that the Sinfin Waste Treatment Plant will not be recommissioned?
Have a supplementary, Councillor Shanker?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Smale. Another question not answered. So without avoiding the question again, without hiding behind any legal issues, will you as an individual reassure local residents that you'll do whatever you can do to stop this failed technology and plant ever being recommissioned again?
Councillor Smale.
Thank you very much, Councillor Shanker. That's not a personal decision that I can take. That would be one that as a whole collective cabinet would have to make that decision. Thank you.
Question Z, Alex.
Question Z is from Councillor Peatfield to Councillor Hassel. What progress has been made on the implementation of the council resolution related to the future of the High Street from January 2022?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Peatfield?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for this response, but the question is, where are the residents? Where is the community organisations, the businesses? Where are the bids in this plan? Everything that was mentioned in the motion a year ago is lacking and missing from your feedback here. Would you agree that, once again, you have dumbed down and reshaped in order to make the motion fit? And it's a real shame that you have actually missed out on what could have been short-term urgent fixes here.
I think that was 7 questions, but...
It was. I'll reply. The answer is no, we're not dumbing down. We've got great and high aspirations for this city and the city centre. Hopefully you will have seen progress. You'll have seen in the reply that we have made great strides in making partnerships work within this city. And your motion, while it had some good points, doesn't fulfil all of our aspirations. And quite frankly, Councillor Peatfield, I won't take my advice from someone who takes theirs from Chris Williamson. Thank you.
Question AA, Alex.
Question AA is from Councillor Dinser to Councillor Eyre. How will proposed budget cuts to the neighbourhoods team affect the service?
Have a supplementary, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Eyre, for your response. Whilst I and the Labour group will agree with the ambition for Derby...
Sorry, Councillor Dinser, I can't hear you because your leader's talking.
Can you hear me or not? Do you agree that, as you say, these unprecedented savings, or should I say cuts in budget, will impact negatively on the Better Together partnership working and ambition?
Thank you, Councillor Dinser. I think we covered a lot of that at executive scrutiny on Monday, and we are having to make some very difficult decisions around this, and we'll endeavour to ensure that our neighbourhood service is delivered to the best of its ability, as it always is. But a couple of changes that I feel we're going to have to make is that those members of the council that send their casework to neighbourhood officers and can't be bothered to do it are going to have to start doing their casework. And those members of this council who try and get PPOs to deliver their leaflets for them, non-political leaflets, but leaflets nonetheless, we'll also have to stop doing that. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Question double B, Alex.
Question double B is from Councillor Hesselgrave to Councillor Poulter. Can you summarise the impact of the incorporation of the socio-economic duty into council practice?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Hesselgrave?
Yes, Mr Mayor. Thank you for this response, Councillor Poulter. The Labour Group are pleased and proud to have initiated this. We will be seeking formal accreditation for this. Progress on full integration is always incremental for any council. And will we see the socio-economic duty in action in the forthcoming budget?
Councillor Poulter.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As described in the response, Councillor Hesselgrave, it's work in progress. We'll look at that suggestion at the end of all implementation. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Question CC.
Question CC is from Councillor Kerr to Councillor Hassel. Does the council have a policy to enable more seats to be placed on highways land?
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Kerr?
I'm presuming from this quite brief answer that public seating will now be part of the highways asset process. Does that mean that families requesting a memorial bench for a loved one will now be able to achieve this on highway classified location, which I've been unsuccessful in trying to achieve before?
Councillor Hassel.
Councillor Kerr, that memorial benches don't fall under my portfolio. I'd refer you to Councillor Pearce if I were you.
Thank you. Question double D.
Question double D is from Councillors Shanker and Councillor Kerr, and they are addressed to Councillor Pearce. In summary, they are what progress has been made on reopening the Guildhall.
Do you have a
Apologies, yes, Councillor Smell.
Right. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Shanker?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Smale, having spent approximately £1.5 million on a facility that is shut down since this administration took control, when will you get to grips with this matter and bring forward plans to restore such an important asset in the city centre?
Thank you, Councillor Shanker. We're always looking at our regeneration and projects in culture. When the time's appropriate after this budget round setting, we'll look at the business case on each round of future projects, and we'll bring them forward as and when. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary? No, thank you. The last one then, question double E.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Final question is Councillor Kerr to Councillor Smale. How are the council managing and altering the use of our websites to reduce the carbon footprint of its IT operations?
Councillor Kerr, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. And thank you, Councillor Smale, for this update, and it's good to know that the hardware issues are being considered. However, software design and web content is also important, and that impacts both on our energy costs and also the energy costs of somebody who is accessing our website. Is this an area that is also being considered?
Councillor Smale.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. I'm sure it is with our team, but obviously I'll double check with our head of IT and get back to you. But obviously any feedback or input into any of our future schemes is always welcome. So please submit any ideas forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That completes the questions. The next item of business is a minute extract from the Audit and Governance Committee. I understand the committee have been reviewing the recruitment of the Council's independent members and the annual allowances they receive. Councillor West, as Chair of the Audit and Governance Committee, will you move the minute and introduce this item?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I will move as printed and express the committee's thanks to all that took part in this process. It was quite a lengthy process from a very quick question that came from the committee, but as is quite clear from the report, all that work has been done, and as I say, move as printed.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Jennings. Thank you. All those in favour? Unless anybody wants to speak on it? No. All those in favour, please show. Anybody against? That is carried. Item 10 then, you'll now receive a minute extract from last week's Council Cabinet meeting in relation to the setting of Council tax base. Councillor Smale, as the Cabinet Member for Finance, will you move this minute, please?
Of course, Mr Mayor, I'll move it as printed if you don't mind, please.
Is that seconded? Councillor Poulter, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Anyone against? That is carried. Item 11 then, the next item of business, report of the returning officer relating to an interim polling place review that has followed the publication of the Local Government Boundary Commission for England's final recommendations for the Council's ward boundaries. Councillor Barker, although this is a non-executive matter, as this relates to governance, do you wish to move this minute?
Move the recommendation as printed, please.
Is that seconded? Councillor Poulter. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you, that's carried. Item 12. Final item of business before I move to the remaining motions is a report proposing some constitutional amendments. The report relates to statutory guidance issued in relation to protecting vulnerable residents from being drawn into terrorism. Councillor Eyre, as the Cabinet Member for Community Safety, will you move the minute, please?
I'll move, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Is that seconded? Councillor Pearce. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Anybody against? That's carried. We've now got to item 14, which is a motion on Alistry Hall and Golf Course to be moved by Councillor Skelton and seconded by Councillor Atwell. Councillor Skelton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors will recall that I proposed and Councillor Repton seconded a motion on this subject in July 2021. And the first three paragraphs of this motion form the background to today's motion, referring obviously back to what happened in 2021. And the way things were handled back then actually left a lot to be desired. Fast forward to today, and there are governance issues. There is no open, transparent, fair process for potential bidders for the hall and golf course to go through. This is urgently needed because there are now several organisations who are interested in acquiring the hall and or golf course. The first thing the council needs to do is get a professional valuation done on the golf course as a Harry S. Colt designed golf course, not as just a piece of public open space. Historic England is yet again interested in getting the small amount of research done which would lead to an assessment for grade listing. This would positively affect the site value. And it is vital that the council fully cooperates with Historic England to get this last piece of research done. And of course, we all know from the last two nights, those of us who've been in this chamber, the council does need more income. It is facing cuts to statutory services, and surely all councillors would want to minimise any cuts. So we do need to maximise our income, and we as Liberal Democrats have a plan to deal with this. Now, there are rumours, and I stress rumours, that the ex-preferred bidder now wants to do a quick deal at a knockdown price. Perhaps someone in the Conservative group could tell us if this is true or not, because if it is true, it looks like one of those VIP lanes that have become so notorious nationally. I also hear that an expression of interest has gone in from another organisation, and that more organisations are seriously interested as well. But again, we have no open, transparent, fair process in place to properly deal with them. It's all being done behind closed doors. This is a major thing that affects the whole of the city, and it should be done openly and with all of us involved. The motion requests that Marketing Derby they used to handle inquiry. They are in themselves used to handling inquiries for serious inward investors. As we all know, they do an excellent job for the city, and they are ideally placed to be the first port of call for organisations who are interested in the golf course and hall. Publicity across the specialist, and I stress specialist, golfing media also needs to be done, which was not done last time. There may well be many other organisations interested in the prospect of having a historic golf course designed by the world-famous Harry S. Colt. Now, those of us in opposition groups often get accused by the council leadership of talking down the city and having no ambition. Well, so far in this saga, it's been the council's Conservative leadership who have had no ambition for maximising the value of the site for the benefit of residents. Why would they not want to get an income from the site, especially when the council is in real financial difficulties? I ask councillors to support this common sense motion. We just want to get the governance right on this. That's all it is about. Please support the motion.
Councillor Atwell, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, please, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Poulter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I first express my sadness and disappointment at this motion, because at a time when we're dealing with budgets, budget savings, cost of living crisis, health crisis and such, we really shouldn't be wasting on our time on something that's already been decided and is already in progress. Let me touch on the very weak presentation of this motion. Governance is not an issue. There are no expressions of interest in relation to the golf course and hall combined whatsoever. Historic England have considered all this and declared that the land is not a significant landscape. As regards to the ex-bidder, he may or may not be back in line, but he's no longer got exclusivity on the hall. But in terms of openness, transparency and governance, this is a commercially sensitive issue. If he was to come back in and others were expressing interest, then that has to be dealt with on a commercially sensitive basis. So we're not able to expand on that in any particular way more than that. As to regards to the suggestion that Marketing Derby can handle something like that, that's just pie in the sky. But Marketing Derby are not a property agent. We've used established property agents in the past, such as Faithful and Gould, and if it's necessary in the future, we will do so again. Marketing Derby are not the vehicle for doing that. Let me just touch on a few other aspects of this motion. Listen, the decision has been taken in relation to the golf course. It's been closed. We're working with Derbyshire Wildlife Trust to rewild the wider parkland area. And in actual fact, in other areas of the country, people are following our lead. They've lauded the decision we've taken and the example we've set, and others are taking our lead. So you can take the golf course out of the equation. It's not for sale. It never has been for sale. Can't be for sale. And the decision has been taken to rewild it. So we should draw a line under that, and that should have been done months ago. The Liberal Democrats seem to be responding to a few lone voices, golfers, still trying to support an unworthy cause. Now then, listen, Councillor Skelton refers to Stoke Park being sold for 57 million. Well, I was going to use the expression, the two, Stoke Park and Allestree Park Hall, are like chalk and cheese, but I did hear somebody else describe it as being the difference between Delboys Flats in Peckham and South Fork in Dallas. We've researched this, and there's a picture that shall pass around if you want to see it, but these are two different ball games. These are in two different fields whatsoever. I'll just read out how Stoke Park is described. And by the way, it's not in Stoke. It's near Heathrow Airport. and it's in the commuter belt for London, so that's going to affect its value to start with. But Stoke Park is described as a 27-hole golf course in 300 acres with a 49-bedroomed 5-star hotel, a spa, a leisure centre, 3 restaurants, 3 bars and lounges, 13 tennis courts and 14 acres of grounds. Alistair Hall can only be described as a substantial stately house, but other than that, it can only be described as a building that requires £5 million plus in heritage works, even to make it sound and safe before you start to develop it. If Councillor Skelton thinks she can get the richest guy in Asia, who's bought this Stoke Hall with his oil money, if she thinks she can get him here to buy it on the same terms, then good luck. Let us know how you go on, and we'll do it. This place has been up for sale for decades, and if we could have sold it, if we could have made a substantial amount of it, we surely would. But it's work in progress in relation to what's happening there now. All expressions of interest, and that's all we've received. No business cases, no formal detailed bids have been put forward. We have received a couple of very early expressions of interest this week, which will be and have been handed to the strategic director responsible and the officers, the property officers dealing to evaluate, and if they're of any value, they'll be brought to cabinet and a decision will be taken. By Ryan. Okay.
Can I ask you to draw to a rapid conclusion? You've had 5 minutes.
I'm happy to say, I mean, it's a ridiculous motion. It should never have been brought, and my group will be voting against.
Thank you. Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to move a motion without notice under CP 42D, please.
Sorry. Tell us about it.
Yes, sure. I think having heard the leader and the leader of the Liberal Democrats contribute to this debate so far proves the necessity to move this motion without notice. And what I'd like to do is refer this to the Audit and Governance Committee to consider whether this matter should be added to the committee's work programme and to determine appropriate action as necessary. And with your permission, Mr. Mayor, I'll go into the reasons why I'd like to propose that motion. So,
please do.
Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors, in the last few days, I've received several calls and listened to many allegations that are quite serious in nature, in all seriousness, and that I feel could damage this council's reputation. I've asked for evidence, I must add, and even written confirmation on some of the more concerning matters, and as yet haven't received anything. I must also add, some of these allegations appear to be extremely hard to believe and would probably be more aligned to a soap story than the sale of an asset by a local authority and of a hall and the rewilding of a golf course. But nevertheless, the allegations, some of them appear to be very serious and repeated on a number of occasions this week and in previous months. And I think the Audit and Governance Committee should look at this matter and deal with the allegations, carry out whatever work is needed to be done, and allow the city to move on. Because otherwise I can just see motion after motion coming back to this council on this matter. And as the leader says, there's more pressing and urgent matters in Derby and generally in society that we should be focused on. I would hope all members want to preserve the reputation and uphold the reputation of this council, and referring the matter to a cross-party committee, as the Audit and Governance Committee, will allow this council to take the necessary steps needed.
Do you have a seconder, Councillor Shanker? Right, Councillor Barker has seconded that. Right, we need to... All right, do you want to speak as a seconder?
I was just going to speak as a seconder, Mr Mayor, in relation to that we support Councillor Shanker's suggestion. There's nothing to hide over this. This matter's been debated too many times now in this chamber. It's an absolute waste of space for as far as I'm concerned. There's nothing to hide at all, and that's the only answer, and we'll put it to bed once and for all.
Thank you. Those in favour then of under...
Skelton wishes to speak, indication wishes to speak.
All right, if you're speaking on the CP 42, yep.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. We were actually later on going to be speaking about referring this to audit and governance. Well, actually, you can see the speech.
It's all there in the speech.
It's there on the speech. And if this motion is not implemented, we will be raising these issues at Audit and Governance Committee and, if necessary, with the Council's external auditors, because we are quite serious about this. As Councillor Shanker has said, there are various things that are being said. They need to be looked at. But we, as councillors, need to be sure that we are actually getting the full value of this site and making the most of it. We are actually in the situation at the moment, last night and the night before, people sat in this chamber going through cut after cut after cut to statutory services, to vulnerable people, and I'm sorry, if there's a possibility that we can actually get a decent amount of income from this site, then I think we should take it. We should certainly investigate it and make sure that if it isn't, well, it isn't. But let's properly investigate it with a transparent, open and fair process. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was going to raise a point of order, but I'll just use it as a speech. Can you give some clarity on the procedural part of this that Councillor Shanks has introduced? Is it procedurally correct to introduce a motion whilst debating a motion? Is that something that this council can do?
Yeah, it perfectly is, and I'm sure you would make every use of CPs when you wanted to. And I do recommend every councillor reads the CPs, especially if you ever occupy this chair. It's extremely important. Yeah, I've got a mini copy right in front of me, and I'll quote it. Motions without notice. CP 42. The following motions may be moved without notice. There's A, B, C, D, and D says to refer something to an appropriate body or individual. That has been moved and seconded and debated, and that is perfectly legitimate. As I said at a meeting once or twice ago, that is your constitution. You have the right to change it. You have the right to make changes to the constitution at the appropriate time. But this is the constitution we're working on. It's the constitution you are all signed up to. And I think everything that's been done is legitimate so far. Therefore, if there's no more speakers on that motion of Councillor Shanker's, I'm going to put it to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Anybody against? That is carried, and that also concludes the substantive debate.
No, it doesn't. You need to
Right?
Ruth now.
I'm going to take advice.
No, Ruth now gets the opportunity to sum up on her. If there's any more speakers on the substantive motion,
They can speak now.
they can speak.
I was wrong, and I apologise. Yeah. We can go back to the substantive motion. Are there any other speakers before I ask Councillor Atwell to speak? I think the arguments have all been aired, and we have a bit of consensus for once. Councillor Atwell, do you wish to speak?
I'm quite happy for it to go to the Ordinance and Government Committee, and we'll see where it goes from there. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, and Councillor Skelton, do you wish to add anything and sum up?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As I have said, it is vital that we get these things sorted out and it's done in a fair, transparent and open way. And I believe this going to Audit and Governance Committee should make sure that that happens. Obviously, if necessary, it can be referred to the external auditors of the council. So yes, I'm happy with this process, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favour, please show. It's not been amended, so those in favour of Councillor Skelton's original motion, please show. Those against? Thank you. That is defeated.
Can we just have one moment adjournment?
Yep. One moment's adjournment, please. Thank you. We're doing well so far. Let's have a 5. Moving then to the item 15, the budget priorities for climate action. Councillor Kerr to move.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And in some ways, I must admit that the heading is slightly a misnomer. But it is about climate change. That bit is right, because unlike COVID, which is still there, we're learning to live with it, climate change is definitely still getting worse. I mentioned in the motion that the UK hottest ever year was the first year when the average temperature has been over 10 degrees. The hottest ever year in the UK was last year. Globally, it's one of the top 10. There seems to be some debate still about the full statistics of the global temperatures in 2022, but the World Meteorological Organization said that it's the 8th consecutive year, 2015 to 2022, the annual temperature is at least 1 degree centigrade above the pre-industrial levels. 1 degree of the 1.5 that we're trying to not go above. This morning, I was at the Pension and Investments meeting in Matlock, looking at the local government pension scheme for Derby. We had reports on climate change, and the Pensions and Investments organisation has had some work done by a company called Mercer, with a couple of associates, and looking at the impact of climate change on investment. So they're looking at the big economic picture. And what they are saying that even in the situation of a failed transition, where we have failed to contain those temperatures, it is really bad news. If we manage to stay within 1.5, 1.6, then we'll be okay. But if we go to the 4 degrees, which is what it might be, then it'll impact on everybody's pensions, because there won't be the economic returns on the investments to actually make sure that people are getting their pensions paid for. And that's a really micro impact compared to what that will actually mean on jobs, on homes, on flooding, on fires, and all the other impacts that we know that higher levels of temperature rise are bringing us. That economic impact was being flagged up by Nicholas Stern in his report. Most people remember that. It was 2006. It was a long time ago. And what he was predicting then is what we're just beginning to see now. It's not just climate that's these particulars, what I'm looking at here. It's also the economy, as they've said. And it's the economy for Derby. In the budget papers that we've got, we have a figure there for utilities. Utilities is mostly energy. I haven't got the actual figures yet, I've asked for them. But we also use energy in the council on fuels, on our diesel, our petrol for vehicles. Those are the big ones. It's around, ballpark figure, 10% of our total budget. We haven't got any oil refineries here. We're not got a plant making methane, except a very little bit in Severn Trent, when I think it's working. You know, we are buying in the vast majority of energy. It's a flow of cash out of the city. The more energy we use, it's for the budget of ourselves, it's less we've got to spend on everything else. For the whole of the city, it's money that people living here can't spend on other things in the economy. They can't spend on the services, the food, the well-being, their leisure that they might want to be doing. So there are so many benefits of not needing to spend money on fuel, not just for the environment, but for the economy. This is also not a party political issue, and I want to really emphasise that, because people know that I am passionate about this as a subject. I have been known about this for probably the whole time I've been a councillor. And there are good initiatives which I welcome, and they come from lots of different directions. And it's really good that we are getting monies in. We're bidding for money to improve our council houses. We're bidding for money to put into our own schemes. And we are doing things which I really applaud. And we need to do more of them. It doesn't matter where the ideas come from. They are the right thing to do. And all of us, you know, across the chamber, we all supported the need to take action on the climate emergency. And what this motion is aiming to do is to set some of the things in place to build a foundation to be able to do more to deliver on that action that we need to engage with the climate emergency. So, how have we been doing it? Myself and the other climate champions were meeting regularly, and it was cross-party, and I felt that they were really open meetings. We had some really positive exchanges between the people who were there. I think people were speaking without the majority of the time, people were there working together without wearing a political hat. But we haven't had a meeting, I think, since early in November. And most of the things that I've mentioned here, I had raised as part of being a climate champion, or I've spoken to officers about. They're not new ideas that people in the council have not heard before. They're also not big ticket items. Many have very little budget impact, but they can mean that we're looking to the future and taking action for the future in ways that we should be doing. The first one isn't stopping anybody buying anything, but it's saying that if you want to invest in something that will, before its lifetime is over, goes against our target for when we want to be zero carbon, we need to make sure that Cabinet knows that we're going to make it more difficult to get to that zero carbon target. So typically, if you're going to get a big gas boiler, a building this size, or even building, you know, a school-sized gas boiler, it'll last more than 15 years. But we've said, officers have said, we're going for a target of 2035 for zero carbon. So if we install a gas boiler for a school now, we need to be looking at replacing it in 13 years' time, not at the end of its lifetime. And Cabinet need to know that they're making a decision, that officers are making a decision, they say it's the right thing to do, and that may be fine, it may be the right thing to do, but we'll need to be thinking about that again before the end of that boiler's lifetime. It's not stopping Cabinet doing anything, it's not stopping officers doing anything, it says we need to know that this has an implication. We have the turbine on the river. We're not publicising it very well. People do say, what is that funny building? They don't know it's a turbine generating electricity used by this building and others. It's been there about 10 years now, and I haven't got the up-to-date figures for it, but it was supposed to have a decent payback, and the electricity price has gone up since then, which will mean that the payback will be better. The electricity prices realistically aren't going to go back to where they were, so we can look at other turbines in other places along our river, and we own land along the river in a number of useful places, not all of them, to say Derby can get electricity from the river. And then we're not spending, our money then doesn't flow out of the city. It means that electricity is being paid for and comes back to here, to Derby. If we own it, it'll be Derby, the city council that gets an income stream from owning that electricity and selling it. The money doesn't flow out of the city. But we need to know the viability of that, we need to know what the costs are going to be, and the first thing to do does have a budget implication, because we need to put a little pot of money in to get Derwent Hydro or some other organisation, Derwent Hydro put in one here, to come and look at it, do a feasibility study, a business case, and then we can say, right, that's got to pay back, it's going to be 5 years, 10 years, whatever, do we want to do it? That later decision is down the road. The first decision to say, we need to look into this, is one which I would like to see proposed by the Cabinet for this coming budget. We're talking about maybe 50,000. It's not a large amount of money, and there are reserves which we could take that from if we chose to do it. We've got the local plan starting. The local plan working group had its first meeting recently, and that will roll out over the next 18 months or so. But one of the things that needs to do is not just look at our relationship with electricity and being reactive, to say we want a new housing estate over there or a new industrial area there, and then ask Western Power, how can you put some cables in, please? It would be good to know where there are already good areas of cables, where we could put more solar panels on roofs, and there would be capacity within the grid to receive the electricity on a nice, sunny January day, because cold weather makes your panels more efficient, even if the sun's not as strong. Maybe March is better. But we don't know where best to invest that without going and asking them. So rather than going and saying, what about this car park and putting panels on the top of it, which is the sort of thing that Portsmouth is doing, or what about that roof that we've not got anything on at the moment, maybe that would be a good area. Let's actually find out where the good areas are and work with them and work together and get that included as a way of prioritising land uses within our local plan. One of the things that we had in the exec scrutiny yesterday, when we were talking about capital programme, was concerns about materials. It's, procurement is an issue. It's costs are going up and the projects are being delayed because of the lack of resources. Now, we can't suddenly provide materials for everything, but if different councils across the country start saying, well, actually, we do need more of X or more of Y, and we know we need that for quite a while, and so does the wider community, we could be looking at how we could have some of the products we need produced more locally. Now, we could do that ourselves, but there does take a bit of investment in that. So I'm looking at the new mayoral authority and whether it could be leading on saying, let's manufacture more photovoltaic panels and let's put that plant nearby. Let's go for Infinity Park. Let's offer them some space there. Or whether it's insulation. We could be taking products from fields outside Derby and turning them into insulation panels to cut down on the energy costs of people's homes in Derby. The products would then be on our doorstep. We could do the job more cheaply. And the final thing is looking at the community's opportunity to invest in this as well. We know that we have a very unequal society across the whole of the UK. And we can't solve that problem here because it's too big. It's too big it's a macro fiscal problem that we're not going to address here. But it means that there are people in Derby who aren't poor and on the breadline. There are people in Derby who have money that they could invest. And some of those people might choose to invest it in Derby, but there isn't a mechanism by which they can fund that plant that's going to make photovoltaic panels or insulate social housing, or even help getting solar panels on the roofs of their next door neighbours and set up a local energy network so that they can benefit from that as well. So we need to work with organisations who can actually help bring products to the market which can be funded, and people in Derby can help support initiatives in Derby. I haven't got the expertise in that, and it's something that I hope that within Derby we have got it and we can help achieve. That's my vision. I don't think of it as being party political in any way. It's something that we all signed up to want to do to address the climate emergency. And these are a few of the first steps that we could take if we chose to do at very little cost to start to make a difference. And if we could show how it's done, then other councils in other areas might copy us, and we might manage to start turning around that constant escalating increase in temperature that we are seeing globally. We could be a small part of the solution. I hope that everybody now, and whoever is running the authority post-May, will pick up on these sorts of issues and take them forward, and this can be the first small step on making a difference. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Card, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right to speak, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hassel, followed by Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really quite disappointed that Lucy's brought this motion, being a climate champion. She has access to myself, officers, or other colleagues as climate champions to discuss issues like this and bring it forward in a more meaningful way. And sadly, what has happened yet again with one of your motions, it's rushed, it's ill thought through, and totally inappropriate. There are caveat for that is there's probably one of those points which is probably workable. A couple I will mention. For item 4, you're sort of preempting the combined authority decision, so not really workable. Point 3, probably not too bad. Point 2, about turbines, and you started off your speech by saying it's little cost, then sort of pluck 50 grand out the air, which is not an insignificant figure. But let's look at that. You sort of tout the turbine that's servicing primarily this building. Have you seen the size of that thing and the building it serves? How big would a turbine have to be to have any real benefit? And then, and maybe one for the Darley councillors here for their election literature, that they're asking to perhaps have a turbine in a World Heritage site of such a size that it will alleviate Derby's electrical intake needs. But that aside, item 1 really shows your naivety in the process. You are actually requesting that we sort of artificially depreciate assets over their lifetime, which I'm not going to stand here and describe and what that is. I would hope that you do know. But what this motion shows is a lack of accountability, Mr. Mayor. Like a lot of motions that come here, the onus is put on the Cabinet and the administration to enact these things, and there's no ownership of the outcomes or anything else that goes with it. Councillor Kerr has been involved in executive scrutiny this week and is well aware of the financial pressures on this council. And to kind of off the cuff just say 50 grand here and a bit there, it's a nonsense. And I've said before, Councillor Kerr is very passionate about this subject. I've got a great deal of respect for her, but when you bring things like this, it has no meaning, it has no value, and it does nothing for the cause. So I would urge members in the chamber to vote against it. It's just totally inappropriate. Thank you.
Councillor Rawson.
Thank you, Chair. I had to speak on this purely because as I sit here and figures are being thrown out there of £50,000 for a turbine. Just a quick Google shows me, and the history of this place, that it was £1.7 million to put in the turbine that services this building. I'd love to go to the School of Finance for the Liberal Democrats because everything costs less than it should do and is worth more than it actually is. It's delusional. And the fact that the members of their own party are very clearly saying that the Conservatives are the only ones that can continue to run this council, because we're obviously the only ones with any sense, because it seems that you guys have completely lost the plot. There is no logic in the things that you're saying, and it's so disappointing to see that the only real opposition that we have is the Labour Party, because you cannot be trusted, because you don't know the facts and figures, and you're just making things up for your focuses that you're putting out there, and it's just becoming ridiculous. So I just had to point those facts out, and although we all agree climate change is a big issue, I think it's important the facts and figures are legitimate and correct, and we need to stop putting fictional figures out there that get in your focuses and actually are just totally inappropriate and not worth the paper they're written on.
Thank you. Councillor Peatfield.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an amendment.
seen it and it's in order.
Yes, it's fine. That's wonderful.
This amendment has been seen prior to the meeting by the monitoring officer, and her decision is that it is in order. So,
Thank you.
Councillor Beatfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I do want to reiterate that I don't at all dispute Councillor Kerr's alarming facts that she's discussed. I agree that her points 1 to 5 are all excellent initiatives, and I understand her frustration and why she's brought such a motion to full council. It's a frustration that I share. But the point of this motion is that while Councillor Kerr may be an engineer, we in this room are not the experts, and it's a wonderful wish list to have, and it should be discussed in the correct place. It should be a joint decision as to where our priorities lie, and we should consult the experts before we make those decisions and finalise those priorities. And that place is not in the council chamber when it comes to climate funding and the priorities and where we should place them. However, I completely understand why Councillor Kerr, as I say, has brought these points. It is a sense of frustration. It is a sense of we've seen nothing happen for over a year. We've seen very little happen since 2019 when we declared the emergency. But this amendment addresses that issue in a similar way, but without the specifics, I hope. What it does is focus the motion on the urgency that we need to have a meeting of the Green Board. We've called on it and we've asked why it's not happened. It's been, as I say, over a year now since the former board met. And that is the place where we should be making those decisions and calling those priorities. So the motion calls to have an urgent, immediate meeting of the new Green Board in order to prioritise where the money that we do have will be focused in the coming year, short term, in the medium term and in the long term. But of course, in the immediate, I think that an initial meeting should be held before the budget meeting. Can I actually address that, Mr. Mayor? Because I'm going to call CP64 on this. There have been continuous, spurious accusations that I don't turn up to climate meetings. One meeting that you've been to, that Councillor Hassel has been to, Mr. Mayor, that I was unable to attend, and for a very valid reason, and yet I keep getting attacks suggesting that I am not committed to the climate emergency. I absolutely call it out of order, and I call that it is utterly disrespectful.
I think we can accept that, Councillor Peatfield, and please move on with your.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So the second part of the amendment, the second point of the amendment calls on the administration to make sure that we have the funding, that we source the funding over the next year in order to back up the Green Board's priorities, to make sure that whatever those priorities are, that we are able to follow them through. And finally, something that has been a frustration for us climate champions is that the funding pot that's been put aside, which I asked about earlier, the 3 million pot, which is now 2.5, ultimately the Cabinet has the final say on where that is spent. And I believe that the Green Board should have a say in where it's spent. We've seen in the case of the Forests for the Future that, you know, while it's a nice project, it's not necessarily added anything to decarbonisation for the city. So the fact that we could, the amendments suggests that we discover a way that we can work that and the Green Board can have some responsibility for where, and some say and influence on where that's spent. Finally, the motion just removes the last line in order for it to all make sense. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is that amendment seconded? Councillor Dinsmore, do you wish to speak to it now or reserve your right?
Yeah, I think I'll speak now, Mr.
Please
Mayor,
do.
and hopefully we can get to... yeah, climate change is a passionate and urgent subject and challenge for Derby, the UK and the whole world. And every member in this chamber, I'm sure, is signed up to make a difference on climate change. The question is, what will be the most impactful and workable within our council procedures and processes? I mean, I recall the opening of the installation of the turbine facility outside the council house, and I was the cabinet member at the time when that was opened. It is limited in terms of what it can do, and it is expensive to install. We do need to look at the details. We're not the experts in here to do that. We need the right people to advise the council in terms of how we can actually make a difference on climate change across all the areas that Councillor Kerr referred to in her resolution. But I think, as Councillor Peterfield has said, we need the right procedures and processes to be used to undertake this work. And some of this, although good, is not costed fully, and it doesn't tell us how it will impact on the budget. So I would support Councillor Peterfield's amendment to this original resolution, albeit that everything raised by Councillor Kerr is important and can hopefully make a difference, but the expertise is not here, and it cannot be decided upon here. We need the right processes. The Green Board has been identified by the Council, has the focus to actually look at how we make a difference on climate change. And I think the amendment enables that to happen, and it will also enable the issues raised by Councillor Kerr to be progressed in the right way. Otherwise, they will not get very far at all. So I support the amendment, and I hope the Chamber supports this, and let's get to a decision and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Poulter on the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief and just address the 3 points in the amendment. We absolutely welcome the opportunity to put some pace into decision making around this, and from the Green Board with the objective to formalise priorities. That board has been in place for 3 years, and I have to say, not been terribly productive. So if all of a sudden we can put some pace into it and help look at the priorities for the next year, we'd absolutely welcome that. In relation to item 2, identify and earmark appropriate funding in this year's budget. Well, I absolutely hope that the Liberal Democrat group can lead this through the Green Board with a costed, detailed, funded series of proposals that we can afford. So I look forward to seeing that in the next few days. In relation to item 3, certainly you can request of me to give consideration to how this oversight and responsibility for the allocation is done. I'm looking forward to seeing the argument for removing that from ultimately Cabinet to decide. But we're more than happy, and the Cabinet member will be more than happy to listen to the arguments to not just responsibility, but to delegate it to the Green Board. But I can't see the argument at this point. Thank you.
Councillor Kerr, to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Climate Commission has met a number of times, and the Green Board is supposed to be subsuming its responsibility. And we've heard talk about it as climate champions for the last 6 months, maybe 9 months, and it has done nothing. The Commission hasn't been meeting. The Green Board has not started meeting. It's somehow rolling forward from the Renaissance Board, I think. But I'm not close enough to the leadership of the organisations and the partnership, the higher partnerships within the council to know, within Derby, to know exactly what's happening. And frankly, I don't have the confidence that that is the way forward. I can't see it having the energy and the verve and the staffing to be able to push these things forward. I've lost my faith in it. But clearly my fellow climate champion still has faith. You know, good on her. And there's a sort of belief here from from the Conservative group that maybe it can actually do something as well. Because there isn't the appetite. I'm not hearing any appetite here to do anything. The Conservative group is saying, you know, £50,000, we have 2.060 meeting in an earmarked reserve to support the capital programme. Now, the capital programme could include, probably not 1.7 million now, but 2 million pounds for another turbine on the river. That could come out of the 2.5 million that we've still got left in the capital pot for the climate, within the climate change pot. So there's our first turbine funded. But we're not prepared to take the first step. So if we're not prepared to take the first step, then maybe the Green Board will have the guts to do so. So maybe that's the way we need to go. Wash our hands of it, give it to somebody else, but give them the energy, give them the dedication, give them the commitment so that they can do our work for us, because if we don't want to take it on, they may have to. I am not convinced that we can sort out a meaningful contribution in the 2023-24 budget in time for this year. And maybe the leader now, whoever's the leader after May, will take it forward with a bit more emphasis. I am frankly disappointed, but I will support the amendment.
Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Anybody against? That's carried. So we revert to the substantive motion as amended. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Graves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think climate change is an emotive issue. However, I think when we debate these in council chamber, we tend to forget the impact on the population. And so I just wanted to make some points about Councillor Kerr's approach to climate change. It is a middle-class aspiration to the detriment of the working class. Councillor Kerr is passionate about this issue, but I feel the UK has done an enormous amount of work to reduce CO2. Disproportionately, the costs fall on the working classes. I also question her methods. She suggests that people and businesses invest in their homes and properties, such as gas boilers, but do not use them to their natural lifetime. Surely that adds to the costs and is a negative impact on climate change. My fear, Mr. Mayor, is that we continue to squeeze the lower income groups. We as councillors are doing our disservice to our electorate. And I think when we discuss and when we debate climate change issues, we should think about who are the people that are suffering from the agenda, because it is a middle class aspiration. It's not a working class aspiration. It is people that think that we should be doing these things, but never consider who's actually paying for it. Whenever government makes decisions, whenever we make decisions, the people that pay the most are always the working class, the lower income groups. And I think we should actually give them some consideration when we're making these decisions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Or I ask Councillor Carr to second. Thank you.
I completely disagree with Councillor Graves' last remarks. As far as I can see, anybody in this country will suffer badly, and in a lot of cases, the working class will suffer the worst when we get the impacts of climate change, which is affecting things like our pension, flooding, and other serious issues that everybody will be affected by. One of the things that Councillor Kerr mentioned was insulation. Now, we don't, in this country, insulate all our hundreds of thousands of terraced houses that we have. And one of the reasons people don't do it is because it loses your space in the room. Now, there are firms only in Germany that make very thin insulation that's as good as anything we've got. We could have those firms in this city, make it, and we wouldn't have to transport the insulation long distances, losing us even more carbon. So, Mr. Chair, I think that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kerr, do you want to add anything at this point?
Yes, please, Mr Mayor. I'm pleased, as Mr Mayor and colleagues, that certainly the majority of people, the vast majority of people in this chamber do believe this is something that we should be taking action on. That is a takeaway that I value. I am somewhat perturbed that we have some members who don't seem to appreciate that before you do a major project, you need to do a business plan, and doing the business plan costs the 50,000 before you actually need your millions to deliver it. And the 50,000 that I was talking about does a small part of it. It might also interest people to know that the Darley Abbey Society is currently looking at how to get a turbine on their weir. And I think if the Darley Abbey Society is looking at that, then it might be something that people in that community would welcome. And they might even help fund it if we have a mechanism in place to help them put that in. So let's hope that the Green Board is able to do something, that we have the energy to take it forward, that we're able to do it for everybody in our community, that we have the opportunity to insulate the homes maybe with panels, maybe using the foamed glass technology that I think that Mike Carr was referring to, which is mostly made in Germany at the moment, and is thin, and that could go into some of our historic buildings within conservation areas, for example, without changing the impact and without taking up too much room space. Maybe we should have one of those plants here. We can use our waste glass to go into it. So let's hope we have that creativity, that we can do it, that we have got the solutions, and that we do it before too much longer passes.
Thank you. There's one aspect I agree with Councillor Kerr on, and that is that a lot of people question what that building is, the turbine. And I would like to see just an interpretive panel, if possible. If it could be open to the public, I don't know if you can get in it, it would be a nice feature to educate the public what it's about. And perhaps that's something that the Green Board and those concerned with could look into. I mean, I've even been asked if it was a mosque because it has a green top on it, which is a very small mosque, but there we are. Those in favour of the motion as amended, please show. Anybody against? Councillor Evans, thank you. That motion as amended is carried. Councillor Barker.
Mr Mayor, I'm sorry to disturb the closing of this meeting, but I wish to move a motion without notice under CP 42 brackets N, closed brackets. You read it out earlier, so I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about. That's what it says here.
Please move it.
The motion is without notice, Mr Mayor, that that the Council Procedure Rules CP 11 to 34 and CP 39 to 40 shall be suspended for the meeting of General Council on Monday the 27th of February 2023 in order that the primary focus of debate at that meeting is consideration of the Council's budget. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Is that seconded?
I moved.
Councillor Shanker seconded it. Do you wish to speak?
Councillor Shanker to speak.
All right. Is it seconded?
I'll reserve my right, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Shanker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you to Councillor Barker. He did consult me on this earlier in the week, and I'm happy to say that. Initially, I was supportive of this amendment. It has been practice in the past to suspend both questions and motions at the budget setting meeting. But in those days, and I recall, there used to be a further meeting to allow motions to be debated and public and members to question or ask questions. Now we have a fewer number of meetings in the municipal year. So if Councillor Barker wishes to accept a slight amendment, is suspend questions because people can put their questions in outside of a council meeting. I think the ability to allow motions should remain for that meeting.
just as an explanation, there is likely to be a March extraordinary meeting before PERDA.
Can't have questions or motions at the extraordinary today.
I'm told we can't have questions on the motions at that. So what we will be able to do is say how wonderful all the people who aren't standing for election are. We can say that at the March meeting rather than try and put it on the budget meeting, which I had rather feared. So are you actually moving an amendment, Councillor Shanker, to say questions yes, motions no? Or no, the other way around? No.
Questions no, motions yes.
Right, is that seconded? Councillor Peatfield, okay. Anybody else wish to speak on that? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Interesting. I was actually there and privy to the conversation around Councillor Barker's motion, and I think Councillor Shanker's response was, oh, it's only taken you 5 years to realise you can do that. But actually, I reflected on that, and that must be because it was regular practice for them to do that in the past. Far be it from me to be cynical enough to suggest that Councillor Shanker's gone away having agreed it to his group and been persuaded by his group that they would like one more opportunity to make political gain and political barnstorming before the election. But so we wouldn't agree to that. We think it's entirely appropriate for the budget meeting to be held and given absolutely as much time as is necessary in the circumstances.
Thank you. Any other speakers on the second amendment? Right. So those in favour then of Councillor Shanker's amendment, which would... That's what I'm trying to do. Councillor Shanker's second amendment, which would mean that at the February budget meeting, we would have the budget and no questions from public or members, but we would allow notices of motion. All right? Those in favour of that, please show.
In favour.
Right. And those against that motion, please show.
It's lost.
That amendment, Councillor Shanker's, is lost, which means that the amendment in the name, no, the motion in the name of Councillor Barker, that we have no questions and no notices of motion at the budget meeting in February. Those in favour, please show. Unless anybody wants to speak on that. No, good. Please show. Those against, please show.
Lost.
That is lost. That brings the business of today's meeting to a close. I look forward to seeing you all in February. And we'll meet to consider the Council's budget and all the questions and all the motions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Didn't need it.
I brought this.
Is it in case he needs to go hit one over the head with it?